At some point after 40, you stop chasing noise. You stop explaining, convincing, and proving. You realize most people listen to respond, not to understand. And in that realization, silence becomes your armor. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you finally learned when words lose their value. That's when you start hearing life differently and noticing the noise you no longer need. There's a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when you start hearing the difference between sound and noise. In your 20s and 30s, noise felt like life. You needed it. Validation, attention, constant motion. You filled your schedule, your phone, your mind. Afraid that stillness might expose something you weren't ready to face. But somewhere after 40, something shifts. You realize that silence doesn't mean emptiness. It means space. Space to think, to breathe, to return to yourself. You start noticing how loud the world has become. Everyone shouting to be heard, opinions fired like bullets, people mistaking volume for truth. And in that chaos, your peace becomes rebellion. You stop oversharing. You stop reacting to every misunderstanding. You stop trying to win arguments that no longer matter. You begin to see that silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. It's how you protect your energy. It's how you observe before you respond. You realize that the ones who talk less often understand more because they listen, not to reply, but to see what others miss in the noise. That's the first awakening after 40. When your voice doesn't need to echo anymore to have weight. When your presence says more than your words ever could. And for the first time in decades, silence starts to feel like home. There's a power in listening that most people never reach. Not the kind of listening that waits for a pause, but the kind that truly hears. After 40, you stop listening to argue. You listen to understand the silence behind the words. You notice what people don't say. The hesitation between sentences, the emotion hiding behind polite tones. You start reading energy more than language. You see insecurity masked as confidence, anger that's really fear. And people who talk endlessly, not to share, but to avoid what silence might reveal. You no longer need to fill every pause with your voice, because you've realized silence isn't a gap in the conversation. It's the part that tells you the most truth. Listening becomes a kind of wisdom. A way of seeing without eyes, of feeling without judgment. And the more you practice it, the more you see how much noise the world uses to hide its pain. The world doesn't fear silence because it's empty. It fears silence because it's honest. And when you stop fearing it, you begin to live from a place of deeper power, the kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard. Power changes, meaning after 40. When you're young, power feels like presence, like being seen, heard, admired. But later, you realize real power hides. It watches, learns, and moves only when necessary. Silence gives you that kind of strength. It teaches you patience. It builds control. You stop being reactive. You become intentional. You speak less, but every word lands heavier. People notice you're calm, and they confuse it with detachment. They don't realize it's control. You've simply stopped negotiating your peace. You no longer chase validation through noise. You've seen what chaos costs, and you refuse to pay the price again. Silence becomes your filter, separating what deserves your energy from what doesn't. Every pause, every moment of restraint builds a kind of authority no loud voice can replicate. Because silence doesn't need attention to have power, it commands it, naturally. That's the paradox of maturity. When you stop performing for the world finally starts listening. The hardest voice to hear in life is your own. It gets buried under expectations, opinions, deadlines, and fears. But silence, real silence, brings it back. It reintroduces you to who you are without the noise. You start hearing the whispers of intuition again, the quiet knowing that always tried to guide you, the voice that says, "This isn't right for me," or "This is where I'm meant to be." The world trains you to drown that voice out, to replace it with logic, productivity, and the endless chase for external approval. But silence retrains you to listen inward, to trust stillness more than urgency. And what you find in that silence isn't emptiness, it's alignment, a clear sense of what matters and what doesn't. You stop running toward everything that shines. You start walking toward what feels right. Because after 40, success isn't about how loud your life looks. It's about how peaceful it feels. And that peace only lives in silence. There's a certain beauty in becoming invisible to the wrong things. After 40, you stop trying to prove your worth. You stop fighting to be seen. Because the right people already notice, and the wrong ones never mattered. You realize that silence isn't withdrawal, it's alignment. You're not disconnected. You're finally connected to yourself. You begin living with intention, choosing what deserves your voice and what deserves your quiet. You start enjoying moments for what they are, not for how they'll look online. You start valuing peace over performance. And that shift changes everything, because silence, once uncomfortable, becomes your sanctuary. It's where you recharge, where you find clarity, where your truest thoughts finally have room to breathe. The world will keep shouting, it always will. But you'll learn that true confidence isn't found in volume, it's found in calm. You won't need to prove your point. Your energy will speak for you. That's the quiet victory, when silence becomes your loudest language. And once you reach that place, you'll never crave noise again. Thrive after 40, for the ones who've learned that silence isn't empty, it's full of answers.